Good morning, everyone. I apologize, we're a minute or two late. We had some technical difficulties here at the building this morning. So welcome to the Criminal Justice Committee meeting, November 13th, 2020. And could I have a roll call first?
Mr. Hess, he's just getting on with his audio. Mr. Byrne, Mr. Lear, present. Mr. Snipes.
He was waiting for.
Miss Dunbar, Miss Parker, Mr. Fairfield,
present.
Mr. Carrico,
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Present.
Mr. Smith,
Present.
Ms. Acolo, Mr. Sponson, Mr.
Present.
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra, Mr. Hunter.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
I'm here, Kelly.
Thank you. I saw you coming on with the audio.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Next is the public comment, and I don't have any notification of a public comment. No one is here in the room, so we're gonna move on. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve all the reports. The circuit clerk's monthly report, the state's attorney, the public defender's probation, and the coroner's report.
So be it.
With the minutes, please.
Second.
Roger, that was first. You were first, and who was second?
Carol.
Harold Smith. Thank you. Let's go to, is Judge Kramer on there somewhere? I don't see anything from Judge Kramer. Let's go to Sandy Cianci, please. Oh.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So my monthly reports, the circuit clerk end of period listing, there's nothing too unusual. We dispersed almost $300,000 last month. The Harris & Harris collection report, we were about 15,000 less this last month than we were the last year. But Harris & Harris has made the effort to slow down their collection efforts due to the, the pandemic and everything. So I guess that isn't too terrible considering, the alternative. And then as far as what we've been turning over to them, in the traffic division, we turned over 1,800 tickets. So, that's about nothing too unusual. And then the state's attorney collection court call, that went really well this last month. They collected almost $12,000. So that's a good thing to celebrate. So if there's any questions about my financial reports.
Any questions? Okay.
So then for computerization, I got a report from both Tyler Technologies and CourtView. I asked them what's the latest, and the result I have is they've been doing some testing of the resolution to the last issue reported by Tyler in the certification testing, and the results have been mixed. They're having a problem relating to the attorney identifying data being returned in the filed responses, and then the resolution to how they're going to fix that. And then once they come up with that, then they're going to resume testing. I told them that this needs to get done, and they agree, but we are where we are. So if there's any questions about that.
Any other questions for Sandy?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Hunter.
Mr. Hunter, go ahead.
I know this is a very tenuous subject, Madam Clerk, but I understand that your part of your workforce has been inundated with respect to COVID. Have you at any point identified what the source of it is and what precautionary efforts are you going to be taking to address that? I mean, that's almost like swatting air. But any report you can provide to us regarding what transpired and identify any issues that you guys can put your fingers on?
Sure. Well, I don't know about issues, but we had one test positive in the traffic department. So I worked with the health department and decided to close the whole traffic department. And they were out for approximately 7 working days at that point. The health department said that that was the time frame that it needed to be. So we closed the traffic department, and then my chief deputy and I were the 2 clerks that went to court then with the 2 traffic judges, and so that we could leave the floater clerk available for the other courtrooms if needed. So, and then all the people in the main office, they picked up and did all the payments. I mean, there was very, very little that wasn't completed. So I am very proud of my departments for picking up and carrying on. Had the reverse happened, I don't know that we would have been able to carry on because, you know, the traffic department doesn't know how to work in the main office. So, so now we're back on track. We have another one that tested positive, and we were advised of that yesterday. So her judge, they're working. I haven't heard the results. They had a meeting yesterday to figure out how they're going to run their court call. The judges, the chief judge, and all the other departments, I have those orders here. Well, I only printed off one of them. The administrative order for the traffic and criminal courts. Everything is continued on. Jim Rowe did the schedule, so we have it all figured out. So if you have court on, say, Monday, November 23rd, then the next court date that you would be expected to be in the courthouse, unless another pandemic issue extends it out, would be Thursday, February 18th. So we have that all planned out. My clerks have to do the continuance minutes on the file just to make sure that, you know, and we can keep up with tracking what's going on, so we don't lose any files in the midst of all of that. I have one clerk that is going home testing out the chief judge's clerk. She's got a laptop. They do most of their stuff through Zoom anyway. So we're testing that out with her. I have a few laptops that I'll be able to send people home, possibly, so that the courts won't slow down too much. We're still very paper-based, so that's going to be a work in progress. I won't send any of the files home with people. I don't want them to get lost. I want them to stay in the building. So we're going to work through that. But we're cleaning up, sanitizing the areas and doing what we need to do. So, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I wasn't accusatory or anything. I was just glad to hear that proactive and pragmatic steps are being taken to address that. That's very serious. I can relate to that. I have friends who have passed and succumbed to that stuff, and it's nothing to play with. And evidently, you have some kind of plan of action to address and make sure that the delivery of services are continued.
Yeah, and then I also have a meeting with the union business agent. I'm not sure what his title is, at noon today with our union president, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with how we're going to move forward as, this increases. I immediately had an agreement made with them right away in March and a memorandum of understanding. So we got that all cleared up and set out, so that we have, but I think it just changes as this whole pandemic moves around, things change. So we're updating that probably today.
So you'll have to do another MOU, you think, or not, or just modify?
Probably modify if there needs to be. I don't know. I mean, we'll work it out. And then I don't know if we're going to go back on some people, rotating in and out. that's what we're probably going to talk about today.
Thank you, Sandy. That
Yep,
sounds
you're
like you and your people have a good handle on that. Any other questions for Sandy?
Just one. Sandy, I want to know, and I guess it's across the field for all department heads that have employees, but if they are on a COVID-19 leave, is that the rule is still in place that they're sick, they don't have to use their sick time or anything, but that it is covered up under the COVID relief plan?
Yes, I have. That's part of our memorandum of understanding. So, like, because I closed the office, that's one set of time that we're using. So they have not lost any of their own personal time over that. The 70 hours, the government gave 80 hours, but our typical work week is only 35 hours. So our 80 hours is really 70 hours, and so everybody gets that first swing at that, and then we haven't had everybody take advantage of that yet, knock on wood. And then there's the opportunity for the COVID version of the FMLA, so I mean there's a lot of steps to get through, but everybody that was off the last couple days down in the traffic department, they didn't lose any of their own personal time.
Should it help when I believe I read where the judges, the chief judges, kind of limit the crowd into the courthouse until this epidemic, so that should kind of help somewhat. Unfortunately, this pandemic is rising, but it looks like there is some vaccine on the way. But until that particular point, I'm hoping that this relaxed time will give you opportunity to where it won't be a congestion upon your office, with what the necessary congestion would be had that not been put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Any other questions for Sandy? Any from the room? Very good. We're gonna move on here. State's Attorney's report. Mr. Rowe, are you on there?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you. I want to thank Wes and his crew in maintenance for keeping everything clean. They're keeping up with the regular duties of the county maintenance department, plus daily cleaning. I know the courthouse, I'm sure a lot over in the county building too. So thank you to those guys for their work. We had one grand jury in late October since our last meeting, and that added about 51 felonies to the tally. So we were at 632 last time. We're up to about 683, and that's give or take a few, because sometimes we file them in court as opposed to going and doing a direct at grand jury. So that number may fluctuate a little bit. We've got one more grand jury this month, and then one in December to close out the year. We're going to probably stay, at least for the first quarter next year, we're going to stay on the one grand jury session a month as opposed to every other week. We may just look to start earlier, so we can put more cases on the call, and it might be a little bit longer day for the grand jurors, but ultimately they're only having to come once a month as opposed to every other week. So those are just some of our plans going forward. Unfortunately, aggravated domestic cases continue to lead the pack, and that's disappointing for a county our size. I think our domestic violence problem is enormous. And for those ag domestics, you're talking about strangulation cases, repeat offenders, great bodily harm. So those are concerning. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Hunter, go ahead.
Yeah, that's really catastrophic, Mr. Rowe, when you think in terms of that. Let me just throw this out here as a trial balloon. Do you think, per capita, when you think in terms of our county's population, the numbers that you said are amazing, do you think the stress COVID has had an impact on that at all? I mean, I know you're not a scientist, but or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but what do you think? Is any correlation in terms of, you know, the COVID stress, you know, depression, anxiety, and all that stuff in terms of family life, as far as a nuclear family is concerned?
I just know from data that we saw come through Harbor House, when we first had the shutdown, I think it was middle of March, it seemed to be a honeymoon period. We were all waiting for the uptick in calls to the hotline, and they didn't come. And then shortly after that, you know, into May or April, May, and since, the numbers have really gone up substantially. So I'm sure it's had some impact. I don't know what impact, but it hasn't been positive.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe?
Mr. Rowe, Snipes, how you doing?
Hey, good morning.
Mr. Snipes, I'll recognize you, but you need to wait your turn, okay? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you asked if there was any other questions. That's why I say, Mr. Rowe, I have one.
I just would appreciate it if you'd wait for me to recognize you. We have to see who's asking.
Okay. Well, my thing is, okay.
Go ahead.
I read where I saw the news and all had a little setback, but yet there was some positives in that that it restricted any type of gang activity, which is something that's unique and serve as a plausible effort to curtail some of the violence. How did you feel about that? And is there going to be any instances that will be implemented, like in the future, in any other cases where there's strong gang activity?
Yeah, so anytime any municipality brings us a property and they want us to look at it for nuisance abatement, whether it's gang nuisance or not, you know, we explore that. And if it's there, it's there. It requires a certain number of calls within a certain number of days, whether you're going with state or city ordinances. So, you know, if the case is there, like any criminal case, we would pursue it. In this instance, it's frustrating because we go into court, we have all the elements, we prove our case, the judge declares the property a gang nuisance property. But there's a part of the statute, and I can't disagree with the judge's interpretation of it. By its plain language, it allows the owner of the home to post a $5,000 bond to continue to remain in the home. This is a unique situation because, in fact, the owner of the home is the nuisance. She was determined to be a part of that gang, and that property was deemed a gang nuisance. So what the law is saying that if your criminal enterprise has $5,000 to post, you can stay in the house. And then we have to wait for one more incident, which is not what any of us want. You know, that next one could be deadly. So unfortunate outcome on the remedy side of things, but we were glad to prove the case. And of course, you know, law enforcement, I'm sure, will have a watchful eye on that residence. And if there's a violation of the terms of that bond, we'd certainly consider going back into court.
And that's always a good thing. My thing was, we took some extra effort to get those individuals that were going to be witnesses that otherwise would not have, to step up to the plate when we had that one session at the high school and things of that nature. So it's just good to hear that there's something positive versus just on the other hand, nothing being happened, and then they will fall back into the remorse of why should I become a witness. So thank your office into that or whatever. Certainly, we have to do whatever we have to do to curtail this violence that's in our communities. But in the case where we were trying to get witnesses and things, it's kind of comforting to know that it wasn't a total walk away, and that though it was not a strong win, there was some plausible things that came out of it. And
yeah, I think when people say that, you know, they're a witness for the state, we've heard that a lot during these hearings. You know, you're not really a witness for the state. You're a witness for yourself. You're a witness for your family. You're a witness for your community, because that's what we're trying to, you know, to clean up when we try to eliminate these gang nuisance properties. So I just hope people realize that they did come forward, and we may not have gotten the remedy that we sought, but we're on our way there still. And you know, what they did takes a lot of courage. Got to be very brave to testify in these type of cases. But ultimately, they did it for their community. So, you know, hopefully there are no future incidents, but if there is, we'll swiftly be back in court. And I did speak with the state senator last night. I'm going to soon speak with our state representative and our incoming state representative about a proposal to change the language of that ordinance. At best, it should be at least discretionary for the judge to determine whether the owner of the property should be allowed to post the bond. It shouldn't be automatic.
I agree. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Rowe?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Hunter, go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. I had previously discussed this with State Attorney Rowe. This may be germane to all the county board members in light of what transpired the other day at our regular meeting, but it does involve the state's attorney. You know, there were some vicissitudes with respect to what transpired regarding appointments, and the comments that we're going to make are germane to the state's attorney as well as the county board chairman and Nita Speckman. I had referenced at that particular meeting that when appointments regarding vacancies on the county board exist, I'd like to see a checklist or a sign-off for the county chairman, as well as Anita Speckman and the state's attorney. If you have a checklist and a sign-off, we won't have to go through what we went through Tuesday. So your impression, Mr. Rowe, regarding that particular offer?
Yeah, we can definitely put that together. I would just encourage the board to include the county clerk in that process.
Okay, fine. We can add that. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. Okay. What do you guys think, Mr. Chairman? What do you think? And I'd like to hear other comments from other commissioners.
Is there anybody else that'd like to comment on that? You know, Mr. Hunter, I'm assuming that having made a mistake and discovered that mistake, that we'll probably figure out a way to fix that. So I think that,
you know, viable discussion like we're having here, and I appreciate, you know, the candor of the state's attorney in terms of promptly addressing the Supreme Court stuff that Commissioner Snipes articulated. Additionally, that thing about the nuisance abatement situation, his response, and this meeting is live streamed, it helps the public and it helps the commissioners and people in the county or people all over the world who may be watching this. It informs them. Information is power, and it's understanding. And I was pleased that Mr. Rowe took the initiative and did what he did, and it highlighted some of the horrendous situations in the city of Kinky.
thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Rowe? Thank you, Mr. Rowe. We appreciate what you do for us every day.
No, I thank you all. Have a good day.
We're going to move on to Public Defender's monthly report. Ed, are you out there?
I am. Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. Basically, it speaks for itself. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. There's been basically an informal COVID protocol in place to limit court appearances that I've been trying to enforce over the last couple months. That's probably one of the reasons why the numbers aren't where I like them to be as far as actually processing cases and getting them resolved. I will say that even since Monday of this week, and given the holiday, we still had at least 2 Department of Correction pleas, so those people hopefully will process out of the jail. I know we have multiple pleas, jail pleas next week also. So, you know, that's kind of our priority now, given the COVID reality. And we did pretty well last time moving some cases during COVID, custody cases, and I will definitely maintain an eye on what's going on with our office regarding that. Other than that, you know, I have no general comments to make. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to talk about it.
Are there any questions out there for Mr. Pennewick?
That's easy.
That was very easy. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
See no questions. Let's move on to Mr. Latham at probation. Tom, what do you have to tell us?
Good morning, everyone. In regards to the report, you can see we just had a little over 2,300 successful contacts last month, 185 drug tests, 118 investigations. We started to climb up with all that. We're still not where we normally would be as far as contacts and drug testing. And I'm sure we're going to pull back a little bit over the next couple months. Those numbers will fall a little bit for November and December. But we got a plan in place to keep monitoring people during this pandemic, and those numbers will get up and stay up. At some point, we'll get back to normal. That's all in regards to the report.
Okay. Any other information you'd like to share with us?
Just bring it to the committee's attention. We're experiencing a shortage with our GPS devices. Basically, we have 0 devices on standby to use right now. It's working with the vendor. We're in contact with them every day to try to get some. But obviously, the GPS devices are widely used right now during this pandemic for both juvenile and adult populations. It's an alternative to detention, and it's causing a shortage. Right now, we have about 14 individuals on electronic monitoring. Some of those are alcohol monitoring devices, not GPS. And just to clarify, the alcohol monitoring devices aren't impacted by that. We have the GPS devices are the ones we can't locate right now. So we'll keep everyone posted. Hopefully that'll clear up pretty soon, and we'll have those devices to use.
Okay. Anything else, Tom?
Real quick, lastly, we had the drug court auction November 6th. It was virtual. Thank you for everyone who participated in that. It's obviously a very unique year. Less money was made this year than past years, but that's to be expected with a lot of work from a lot of people to make it happen with what's going on right now. So I just wanted to thank everyone who worked so hard to get that.
And thank you to you for your hard work for that. Any questions for Mr. Latham? Mr. Hunter, go ahead. You're muted, Mr. Hunter.
I'm trying to, this phone is acting crazy this morning. Tom, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the commissioners on your recent loss of Mayor Bob Latham.
Yeah.
I worked with Bob Latham in many instances, and he was truly a public servant. For not only the people of the village of Bourbonnais, but he had macro impact in terms of his role on the, I think the initial, maybe the first, second board of Karma, as well as the Mayor's Association and so many other things that he was able to do. And you are following in the footsteps of Mayor Latham. And I just want to say our condolences to your family on the loss of you personally, but for the community at large C. I think his efforts and his legacy continues, through your entire family as a public service. But he was one hell of a guy, one hell of a servant, and I just want to share that with you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hunter. He was a great man. He fought for many years. He fought against this, but I'll pass that along to his family. He has a wonderful family. They're all very close, which is very helpful during times like this, especially with the pandemic and how people cannot gather in large groups and things like that. But thank you very much for saying that. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, one question.
Mr. Snipes, go ahead.
Yes. My condolences as well. On behalf of your brother, I did know. I think, is that your brother?
It's my uncle.
Oh, your uncle. Okay. Yeah, I knew him in government service. But I have one question. A lot of the gangs are utilizing the youth supposedly to initiate criminal activity because the consequences are lesser on them. Are you seeing an uprise in the community of youth getting into into situations. I know we see some with guns and the whole 9 yards, but do you see any uprising, or is it just kind of normal numbers in your kind of up under your watch eye?
We experience it in the juvenile population. It seems to be a small percentage causing a large percentage of the problem. You have a handful of juveniles that are causing a lot of the issues that we're seeing. But I think, bigger issue I see right now is when these juveniles come through our system, we work with them over years, but once they get to the Department of Juvenile Justice, DOC, they're returned to the community very quickly. I mean, they're sent to Department of Corrections in February, they're back out, and you're getting a police report in late March, early April. So we just continue that cycle. And if they start young enough, they repeat that cycle several times. But we're focusing on a handful of juveniles that are causing a lot of these issues.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? A question for Mr. Latham? Thanks, Tom, for everything you do every day for us.
Thank you. If I don't see you, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. We're going to go next to the sheriff. Come on up here. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
What do you have for us this morning?
Oh, well, a little bit. You should have the monthly report that was emailed out to you from Kelly. A couple things to note with this being the last month of the fiscal year. We talked about the out of counties and our numbers and where they're at, and on an average in 2020, we are approximately 105 less per month of out of county inmates and detainees than we were in 2019. Obviously, that's a significant number, but as we all find the new excuse of COVID, it's an easy one to say that's why our numbers are down. We didn't take any new ones in for quite a while just because of the unknown. We have started to take some from the marshals and some from ICE, although with the uptick in COVID, that has slowed again. So we're not in any big hurry to overload our jail with out-of-county inmates and detainees. Locally, we would have thought that the number of locals would have dropped as well because of COVID, but unfortunately, it hasn't. Based on 2020, we're only averaging about 4 inmates less in 2020 than we did in 2019. So obviously there is a increased cost in housing our locals than with our out of counties down so low. So that was somewhat significant, and I don't see our locals dropping very much looking forward. That's about all I got on the report, at least the corrections side. Our transports are trending a little bit back up, although that'll slow too with the courthouse and the things up north. A lot of the things up north we're doing by video, which is a big help. And with the courthouse now basically shutting down, our transports over to the courthouse will be very limited as well. On the sworn side, most of our numbers are down: accidents, tickets, fatals. However, our calls for service are up significantly. And, obviously with civil process being down as well, that's going to affect some revenue also. Questions on the report?
Does anyone have any questions on this report for Sheriff Downey?
Secondly, on the animal control update, the intergovernmental agreement with Bourbonnais is in the hands of Bourbonnais. We are waiting for a response, talking to them about a contract, and we will continue to move forward with additional IGAs or intergovernmental agreements to the other municipalities, including Bradley, Kankakee, Momence, St. Anne, Grant Park, and so on. So that's where we're at with that.
Did we do anything with the vehicle situation over there?
Not yet. We're trying.
This weekend at the fairgrounds. If you're looking to buy more guns.
Go ahead.
That's okay. No, we have not. We are still trying to determine what exactly we want. The vehicles that we initially talked about, we're determining size, whether we want a bigger one, whether we want a smaller one. So we're still, and obviously we've got to get a state bid price as opposed, we can't, unfortunately, we just can't go to a local dealer and say, we want this. So if the local dealers can't meet the state bid price, then we have to go obviously outside to a vendor who does.
Go ahead.
So a couple of additional things, and just to give you a heads up and a little bit of additional information regarding our corrections vehicles. We have two buses, and one is a 22 passenger handicapped accessible bus that is has 127,000 miles on it. It's a very valuable vehicle for us when we have to take a large group of people either to the Illinois Department of Corrections or transports up north or transports to the courthouse. Our second bus, which is a 20 passenger 2007, has 136,000 miles on it, and it is sitting in the back with no engine in it right now. The cost we have to replace that engine is approximately $18,000. Fortunately, I guess one advantage of COVID is we haven't needed it. So at this point, we are trying to determine what we're going to do with that vehicle, whether we're going to put an engine in it for $18,000 or look to replace that vehicle with maybe something a little bit newer, not necessarily new, but maybe a used vehicle that we can utilize that has an engine in it. Just to give you a little background on our vans, we have 3 2009 vans. They are 8 to 10 passenger. Respectively, they have 142,000, 144,000, and 180,000 miles on them. We have 2 2011 vans. They're 10 to 12 passenger vans. They have 173,000 miles on them and 242,000 miles on them. We have 2 2017 10 to 12 passenger vans. One has 103,000, the other one has 91,000. And we have 2 2018 vans, 10 to 12 passenger. One has 84,000 miles on it. One has 78,000 miles on it. So our miles on the vans are certainly increasing. We also have a Dodge Caravan that is a 2013. It is also handicapped accessible. It can only transport 1 to 2 passengers. It has 75,000 miles on it. And we have 2 2011 Chevy Tahoes that we basically are utilizing from our old patrol fleet. The 2011s have 166,000 miles and 160,000 miles on them, and 2 2012 Tahoes with 157,000, and the last Tahoe, 2012, has 157 and 150,000 on the second one. So this should be the last year of our 2017 lease on the vans. So we will report back with some options to maybe replace those and keep our fleet at least somewhat a little bit newer. Our transport supervisors and Jay Hansen, who handles our vehicles and some of the maintenance, have done a great job in using the vans, the Tahoes, and the bus when we need them, and taking very good care of them. So I think we're getting by relatively inexpensive with the vans so far. The maintenance hasn't hit us hard yet, but as anything with these vehicles, we look forward to that probably increasing, unfortunately, as they age. But we will keep this committee advised as to our vehicle fleet on the corrections side. Questions on the vehicles? Secondly, we have 2 inspections coming up in the month of November for ICE. And one is Thanksgiving week, which I'm not quite sure why they chose Thanksgiving week, but that is Nakamoto. That is the company that is contracted with ICE to do jail inspections. They do those about every 6 months. And then the week after, we have what's called an ODO inspection. ODO stands for the Office of Detention Oversight. We have been inspected by both of those for the last 3.5 years, however long we've had ICE. And so those are not anything new to us, and we are ready for them. And we normally fare very well with those inspections. So, and both inspections, by the way, are virtual, which is a little bit different than normal inspections, but due to COVID, that's how they are choosing to do their inspections. So, questions on the inspections?
No questions? Go ahead.
And lastly, as we have talked about COVID in different offices and things like that, and the effects it's had on our criminal justice system, I'll give you a COVID update of both of our facilities. Since early October, we've had 16 inmates who have tested positive for COVID. Since we have began the quarantine, we have had 8 of those who have fully recovered. The symptoms have all been minor, sinus, cough, headache type of symptoms. And COVID has also affected our staff. We are not, unfortunately, and that's really how we thought originally that COVID would end up in our facility, was with staff, because a lot of people, to their credit, and this is not just in corrections, but it's probably true everywhere, a lot of people are out there maybe with symptoms, maybe with minor symptoms, who think, I'm good enough to go to work, I'm good enough to go wherever I have to go, and then it ultimately spreads. And that's more than likely what happened at the downtown jail. We do not have any COVID at the Jerome Combs Detention Center. The staff with their COVID obviously has created significant overtime, because unfortunately, like some offices and some other areas and some businesses, we unfortunately cannot close. So we have to have people to man posts in both jails, and that has created some significant overtime, which should be covered under the CARES Act, but nonetheless, it is creating some overtime. I can't say enough about our medical staff. Dr. Long, who is the medical director, and his staff of nurses and physician assistants and nurse practitioners have done outstanding work for both the inmates and our staff. I can't say enough about how long we have gone with minor issues involving COVID. As I have told this committee before, and I've been very public about, the one thing about our medical department is that we understand that new arrests who are coming into our facility sometimes don't have, either they don't have the ability to get medical care or they choose not to. And our goal has always been to make sure that an inmate is better health-wise when they leave than when they came in, because it is a public health issue, and it's something that our medical staff takes pride in. And I can't say enough about the job they do for those inmates and detainees. We talked about the courthouse being shut down, and so what we did is we took it upon ourselves to send a memo to all inmates who are in our custody, our local inmates who are in our custody, notifying them of the shutdown, because quite frankly, it's not really fair for them to sit in jail for 3 months not knowing what's going on. And so we notified them of the shutdown. We also notified them that if they wish to speak to their attorney, to let us know, and we will get that information to their attorney so that their attorney can speak with them at a convenient time for the attorney. But we felt it important that the inmates know and keep them in the loop as to what's going on with COVID and why the courthouse is shut down and why they may not be going to court when they were originally scheduled to go to court. So credit to the jail staff for getting that information out. I'm not sure if they have gotten responses yet for them to contact their attorneys. Mr. Pennewick would probably know a little more about that than we would. But and lastly, as we all know, COVID has not stopped crime. Police all over the county, every municipality, are dealing with individuals that they have to, unfortunately, they are not able to social distance from. And so we know that, including our department and other municipalities, that COVID has made its way through those departments as well. And so all police agencies right now are dealing with COVID, and you know, because we haven't stopped arresting people because people call in. Mr. Rowe referenced the domestic cases, and he's correct. We've seen a huge uptick in the number of domestic cases throughout the county, and police have to respond to those for the safety of everybody. So it's here. Hopefully we can deal with a vaccine at some point, but right now we're going to deal with this for quite a while, I think, and we'll continue to deal with it. Credit to both our staffs in corrections, the police, the other police agencies in the county who go out and do this every day. We basically have instituted, as we should anyway, but universal precautions. We are assuming when we go to somebody's, when we have contact with somebody, we are assuming that they are COVID positive and dealing with them in that way. And hopefully that will help our police officers, it will help the general public, but you know, COVID is not going anywhere, unfortunately. So that's all I got.
Any other questions for Sheriff Downey?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you very much. Man, you guys let me speak today. I really appreciate it. Sheriff, several things. Let me ask you this, and there's a bunch of questions I want to, you touched on the COVID numbers, 16. I didn't hear you say anything with respect to staff numbers. Additionally, any more feedback or any ongoing communication with Congressman Chuy Garcia after his visit? Additionally, if you could enlighten the commissioners regarding the relationship or the ongoing relationship and programmatic efforts that your office has taken in conjunction with the NAACP regarding the Kinky County Rapid Response Team. And that's a group of individuals which we've identified with the Sheriff's Office and local law enforcement in terms of identifying community leaders working together in conjunction with law enforcement. And this is kind of like a macro situation in terms of all the major police chiefs in the county, as well as state police, as well as, in fact, we even brought in the sheriff from Iroquois County to interface in terms of training and working together as eyes and ears of the community to work with the police in terms of quelling misinformation and sharing information to the respective neighborhoods about certain instances that transpire with law enforcement. Could you speak to
Okay.
all of those issues, please?
That's a lot of
I
questions.
know it's quite a bit.
I got them all written down, so I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. As far as COVID with our staff, as I said, we have had I believe off the top of my head, I believe there are 5 deputies who have contracted COVID. 3 have recovered. 1 is presently out. The last one that's out right now had a family member who had COVID, and obviously he had contracted it from his family. Correction staff, I would hate to even give you a number because as far as we have a number of people who are off, but not all have COVID. Some are affected by their family, so they are quarantined. So that is obviously an issue that, as I think Mr. Snipes alluded to earlier in the meeting, you know, they are out for those 14 days or 10 days, and we are requiring them to get released by a doctor. So we want a doctor to tell us that, yes, it's okay for that employee to come back to work, and that has worked out very well. But it is a mix of individuals who are employed by us who have COVID and individuals who have to quarantine, employees who have to quarantine because of a family member. So those are the staff issues that we have with COVID. As far as Chuy Garcia, I've not heard another word from Mr. Garcia relating to anything involving ICE. And the last issue is the NAACP relationship with law enforcement locally and the rapid response team. And I know we've been doing this for quite a while, and I believe, and I've said this publicly, that I believe that nationally it would behoove law enforcement and the NAACP to follow the model that we have created here in Kankakee County with the relationship that we have together and how we address issues together. Law enforcement isn't always right, the general public isn't always right, but together we get through those issues, and I think it's a credit to you, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Pace, members of the NAACP, and all of our law enforcement agencies, all of which have signed on to the 10 shared principles. That is something that the Illinois Chiefs of Police put together with the NAACP. Every agency in our county, one of very few counties, not only in the state of Illinois, but nationwide, who have signed on to those 10 shared principles, and I'm proud to say that we in Kankakee County have. And I think it's a plus for everybody. It's a plus for our community. We've been doing this since 2014, since right after Ferguson happened, and something that both the NAACP and our local law enforcement said, we don't want this to happen in Kankakee County. And we have done a lot of good things over the course of the last 6 years, and we continue to do it. The members of the public on this rapid response team who are getting ready to go through training set up by law enforcement, state's attorney, to talk about issues and how, maybe to describe how police respond to things and why they respond to things, because sometimes there's things that the public doesn't know. And I think it's good, as I think Mr. Hunter alluded to, information is power, and the more information we can share, the better.
Thank you, Sheriff
Mr. Hunter?
Denny.
Did you have any more, Mr. Hunter?
No, as was indicated, when I first got on, I mean, I caught hell for saying it, but, he's one of the rock stars regarding the county government. He's been in the forefront in terms of hosting a lot of the different forums we've had with people from throughout the county. And what we're trying to do is incorporate leaders and people who represent certain constituency groups from Pembroke all the way out to the west coast of the county, as I call it. So
I think these kinds of things are what makes our community different from other communities, and the good people that are working together to make those bonds and make things happen for us. That's what makes us different.
What's amazing too, it's live stream as well too. So it's sometimes I think it's maybe a 400 or 500 level course. If you guys have time to watch that stuff that we've been able to do. I mean, anybody can watch some of the meetings that we conduct. And as I was saying, it just doesn't involve local law enforcement in terms of county stuff. Like I said, Iroquois is beginning to interface. State police are interfacing as well too. So it's and we've had people from other counties to come as well too and observe what we're doing. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, I think there's some individuals have come in from Peoria as well too, and I can't remember the other locales, but it's been very positive, and as he said publicly, it should be a model, for the country.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, guys. Everybody have a good day.
And last but not least on my list is Bob the coroner. Can you hear us, Bob?
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What do you have for us today?
If we go through my report there on the, we had 127 calls in October. 19 were coroner's calls where the coroner has to react to the calls instead of the doctors. And then we have autopsies actually went down a little bit there. We only had 6 in the month of October, which is good. Other than that, I think if you go down the list, it's self-explanable. I'll talk a little bit about our major factors, which we talk a lot about coronavirus, Corona-19, but I also want to illustrate that we have a pandemic also of overdoses. We are very close to hitting the 50 mark right now with less than 2 weeks to go. We're at 43 cases right now with 5 pending on overdoses. We had an accident last night, which we found a lot of drugs in the car, so we don't know how that's going to come out. So we're going to hit that 50 mark, which is, I predicted a long time ago that we were going to hit into the 50s again because we were going strong, especially with this fentanyl. But other than that, the average age is still at 40. Sex-wise, 32 males, 11 females, 13 Caucasians, 9 African Americans, 1 Asian. Basically, as I talked to you about, fentanyl is the rising with a number of our cases are all fentanyl. So we're doing the best we can. We can't get out there to teach, but I do stuff like this to the county board, and hopefully they know. And I think that should be something that, as I keep preaching, that I love to get into the churches to be able to talk about this. But obviously you can't do that. So where we're at right now is what the sheriff just said, that they had 8 mishap fatalities on the vehicles wise. We show 11. That's because they're outside the area. That's what happened last night. Accident was in Will County, but they died in our county. So statistics are different on that. But I'll take any questions you have on anything. Other than that, that's all I got.
Any questions for Mr. Gessner?
Just one.
Go ahead, Mr. Snipes.
Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Commissioner.
Well, that first name. Looking at our COVID numbers in this particular county, what I guess the last ones I saw, they were relatively low in comparison to the number of individuals that are contracting, I believe, COVID. Don't know if there are remedies that's out there, that people, home remedies or whatever, but I don't see a lot of the fatalities as we first came across when we first started out. What do you kind of contribute that to? And then also, if these, is there any way that we can determine the hot spots? Because I believe that it can unfairly harm businesses if they're not the contributive factor. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense out there. I think you're basically should deal a lot with our own Kinky County Health Department, who handles a lot of this stuff. When we get a statistics of a person dying of a COVID or with pneumonia involved, there's all kinds of different diagnoses on that, but COVID seems to hit it. We're at 91 deaths right now throughout the 2020 here in Kinky County. As far as where they're at, I would contact the health department. I think they have a map on that section.
Oh, okay, that'll be good. Thanks.
Any other questions?
That's it.
No other questions? We're going to move on here. So we have a first and a
question. My phone's acting crazy today.
Mr. Hunter, what can I do for you?
Thank you very much. Bob, you're no stranger to my community or the city Kankakee community, period. I mean, you know, the Gester name is synonymous with public service. But anyway, with respect to promulgating information to the churches and stuff, I know that in the past you and Jim Rowe, KMEG, Sheriff's Department have made presentations before the NAACP, which really phenomenal presentations. And I think I'm being redundant when I say that I learned a lot from some of the comments that you made, as well as the panelists. I learned something about fentanyl. I didn't really know how strong that stuff was, but you explained that. But, you know, our church, for example, you know, we've had visitors, you know, from municipal representatives. Alderman Tall has been there, Alderman Curtis, Treasurer Africano, Jake Lee, I think, even came as well too. But a lot of that stuff is done virtual, and you may be able to do presentations virtually, you know, at some of the churches, since you can't do it face to face. But that's just merely a suggestion.
Thank you. I will look in on that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Gester? Thank you, Bob.
All right. Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too, Bob. We have a first and a second to accept these reports. I think it's probably time for a roll call. Is that correct, Kelly? Okay, there we go. Kelly, roll call.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Searoy?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. I want to thank everybody for being patient with me today. My first time up here. The last thing I have on my list is any new business. Does any of the county board members have something new, or?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Fairfield.
We've been talking a lot about the county health department in this meeting that we have in the past. I was wondering if there's some way that we could invite someone from the county health department to make presentations in this committee on what's going on with the COVID.
You know, I believe that report happens in a different committee. Is there any reason why we could not ask John Beavis to come and speak to us? Is there any reason we couldn't do that? Kelly, could you send a message over to him and ask him if he could come to December and if he has time to do that? Seems reasonable to me.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Seroy, please.
Yes.
Yeah, John gives his report during executive committee. And usually he gives a thorough report. And speaking to the data, they're just now compiling the data, and they've got an analyst, I believe, who's trying to figure out the contact tracing and where the hot spots are at. Mr. Wheeler asked that at the last executive committee, and they're starting to formulate that. So for this committee's knowledge.
Very good.
Thank you.
We know John does a good job over there, and that he's probably pretty busy, but maybe he could join us by Zoom for the next meeting just for a short little period. So
One point, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Gester.
Just to remind everybody, at Kinky County Corner.org, we update that every day with COVID. Every day we do that. So
very good.
And it's right on target. So
how many hits are you getting off of that website?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And everywhere I go, people comment about that. Thank you for updating us in the county.
Yeah, thank you very much for updating us. It's kind of by the health department website and your website are who, when people ask me questions, that's who I direct them to go find more answers. So that's a great tool that we have, and thank you for doing that, Bob.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just one, Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Snipes.
Generally, I know I'm always in person, but I had to join the baby Zoomers on today, even though I'm a baby boomer. The Peoria News had, they shot across the screen the young lady that was picking up her grandson and was getting in a car, not a grandson, her son, from his grandmother in the car. That was my sister that they shot into the face last night about 5:30. Some gang members just started shooting randomly. And unfortunately, she was the person and we got the call, and they're flying her in from Peoria because they don't have the plastic surgeons to University of Chicago. And so I take great homage against individuals that do these these criminal acts of violence, these young kids that are in initiations to prove that they can be a gang member by just shooting and things of this nature, that the harms and things that they do to families, the disturbance that they basically cause, and it's just fortunate in this case that we're not having a funeral, but yet there is some very extensive damages and things done. So until she comes out the woods, I'll probably be coming on by Zoom instead of being there in person. And solicit those that pray prayers. Thank you.
Certainly, we'd be glad to extend prayers to your family, and we're very sorry to hear that. That it's, I think we can all get behind condemning those acts of cowardice that are happening everywhere these days. So, anybody else?
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty glad it's over, being it's Friday the 13th and my first time. So yeah, it's and I would entertain that motion, Mr. Hess.
No, I defer to Mr. Kirkstra.
Okay.
For this
it's
committee.
his turn, isn't it? Oh, he's not part of the committee, or is he not here? He's not here. Okay, I think it's up to you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And a second on that?
Second.
You look good back there, Bones, with a nice green tree.
We have to do the roll call. Okay.
I think we might be out of the hurricane.
There you go.
As of today.
But you need to bring some good weather back with you.
Well, we haven't seen it this week.
Okay. All right. Everything done?